Welcome to the MemberWise webcast, and today's title is The Pillars of a Successful CRM Project, and today's session is delivered in partnership with Intercloud 9. So just to run you through what you can expect over the next hour in terms of the learning objectives, the first one we've got here is understand the top 3 reasons why CRM projects fail, know why these problems occur, get real-life examples of the early warning signs to look out for, and obtain practical and proven guidance on how to achieve sustainable change and a successful project. So I'd like to introduce you to our presenters panel and guests today. My name's Rich, I'm the chair of the network, and most of you know me quite well. We've got Chris Watkins, who's the managing director at Intercloud 9. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Rich. Morning, everyone.
We've got Joanna Quirk, who is COO and strategic sponsor at the CIOB. Good morning, Joanna.
Morning, Rich. It's 26 degrees here in Ascot, so getting hot.
Okay, so hopefully you've got the window open.
Yeah.
We've got Tillet, who is data and CRM operations manager at CIOB. Good morning, Tillet.
Morning, Rich. It's 25 degrees here in South London.
Okay, so not too far off your colleagues. We've got Mike Phillips, who's the head of business change at the CIOB also.
Good morning, Rich. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Temperature where you are?
I'd say, I don't know. I can't say. Oh, there we are on the left there, 24.
Okay, so I think we're all from the same source. And of course, Jenny Watkins, Director of Professional Services. Good morning to you, Jenny.
Morning, Rich. Morning, everyone. Lovely to see you. I'm not sure about the temperature. It's gone a bit cloudy here, but it feels pretty muggy. So I'm going to go with 25.
Okay, so, well, there we go. So in terms of the country, we're all in the 20s. So we hope you enjoyed today's session. Before we go to the actual panel session, I just wanted to set the scene a little bit on the topic. So we've got some of the results from our Digital Excellence 2024 survey report, which is a statistically significant report on what digital looks like within membership. And there's a couple of tables for you to take a look at there. In terms of CRM and AMS association management systems, they continue to be what we class as a large spend item and probably the biggest after HQ and staff costs for organisations, so high ticket items. 88% of us are still not fully integrated. And that is in terms of CRM, content management system, learning management system, online communities, that type of content. So we're still, as a sector, not quite there yet. And that's why this continues to be a big topic. On the bottom left-hand side, what we've done there is given you just a quick snapshot of the different platforms and the actual market share that those particular systems have. And then on the right-hand side, we've got some of the actual satisfaction levels with providers and with functionality. And you can see slightly better than it was a couple of years ago, but there's still definitely room for improvement on all of this. So it's a big topic. In terms of the pages on our website, they continue to be the most popular pages when we talk about the solution providers, the topic. It's a big thing for membership. So today's content is really, really timely. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Chris, who is going to just start off with a little bit of a presentation, and then we're going to move into a panel session. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Good morning, everybody. Really glad to see so many people attending, and thanks again to the guys at CIOB for coming along. We'd like to talk to you a bit about the project that we've been working with CIOB on, and just so that we can share some experiences that we've gained together, give you a bit of an insight into how we like to approach projects at Intercloud 9. So referring back to Richard's membership, MemberWise, the Digital Excellence report, we noticed in this one, the number one priority this 18 months is new member acquisition, which takes member engagement off the top spot. And perhaps that's because member engagement is slightly harder to quantify than member acquisition, but we know that acquisition is always a challenge for membership organisations. There's obvious things like getting your name out there, the publicity and visibility of the organisation to members, potential members that you could take on, which is a cold engagement and can span a lot of diverse demographics across the potential membership body. And what we've seen, and everyone quotes as of COVID, the technology interface that members are expecting to be able to interact with you over have changed significantly with the advent of big companies like Amazon, Facebook, and I mean, from my personal use, Sainsbury's, for example, there's a big online platform that enables people to interact with these companies in quite different ways to how they used to. And there's teams of people behind these platforms that build them to be appealing and easy to use, very engaging. And I think that is setting a bit of a precedent for the way that technology needs to align with members. One of the things that we didn't notice in the digital excellence report were a few priorities like increasing the number of steps in operational processes, or manually moving data between systems, or having to look in lots of different places to find information. Those sorts of things we expect to come from the automation, integration, and CRM that underpin the operations within the businesses. The explicit features that we want to see coming out of that are things like being able to empower members and prospective members to interact with the organization, and in doing so, creating space internally for looking into the real priorities that the business have in driving value and engagement and leads conversion internally in the organization. So I suppose taking the focus away from how things happen at a technical level and having all of these pieces in place underpinning the operations that drive real value for members and revenue through the door. And I think in that is that where an organization is now, where they start and where they want to go, i.e. increase member acquisition, that involves a change, and change is implicit underneath all of this. So although we have technology supporting operation, change is implicitly supporting all of that because we want to achieve a different outcome to where we are now. So in summary, just quickly, the market has the same overall priorities, but a small shift away from engagement towards acquisition. And we want to see all the good benefits that we can get from technology, integration, and change as an underpinning principle. And change is complex. Support for the business objective is the essential part that we're trying to achieve. So I'd like to open up a poll. We've got a couple of polls that we'd like to ask some questions to you. So this is the first one. The question that we have is, our current CRM system or provider is fully meeting our needs. And from that, there are a few options: either strongly agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree to that statement. So our current CRM system or provider is fully meeting our needs. And if you would kindly indicate whether you strongly agree with that, whether you agree, whether you feel neutrally about that, disagree, or strongly disagree.
I can see, Jen, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, sorry, Rich, I just noticed that it was the second poll, but it looks like that's been corrected. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Jen. So whilst we give that a little minute for you to have a go at answering that question for us. So Richard showed the latest stats from MemberWise on CRM and AMS. Over 25% are looking to swap providers within the next 12 months. Nearly 3/4 are not likely to recommend their current provider, and nearly 2/3 are not likely to recommend their current solution, which is a real shame to see such wild statistics, because I think that on the surface of it, all the providers, all the vendors, and the organizations have genuine interest in achieving a good outcome. And it seems a shame that the end result of these projects is so mismatched to the outcomes that everyone seems to be looking for. Oh, fantastic. So we've got some results from the poll. So 2% say they would strongly agree, 16% say they would agree, 16% neutral, 44% disagree, and 22% strongly disagree. So if we group together 44, 22, 66% would not agree with this statement. So more than half, which ties in with the stats that Richard and the team at MemberWise have collected as well. So it's a real shame to hear that, and part of our mission into Cloud9 is to try and bridge that gap. I think that there's huge potential in the products and services that are available to membership, and such a shame that it doesn't seem to be aligned as tightly as what we would hope. Okay, so change is definitely needed and difficult. So why do we need change? Well, we want to acquire new members. We want to engage with them. We want to increase our subscriptions revenue. But Richard has mentioned, as he mentioned earlier, that the sector we're not really getting it right, and the statistics are not great. So a few more stats for you. Gartner reported that 55% of CRM implementations will fail. In 2018, the Harvard Business Review estimated that number is even higher if you broaden the definition out from CRM and look at digital transformation. And in 23, McKinsey found that digital transformation fails 70% of the time, and 44% of those respondents did not achieve their transformational goals. 88% reported that they were not able to sustain the goals for more than 3 years, and 42% indicated that the financial benefits of the project were lost during the last stages of large-scale changes, which would seem to make sense if the project is really big, that it becomes more and more difficult to hold on to the initial idea that you had at the beginning as it gets larger and larger. And 90% of projects fail to deliver any measurable ROI, and that's just awful. We feel really strongly, as I said at Into Cloud9, that isn't really what we'd like to see being achieved, and that's why we are so proud to be able to share the stories that we found when we've worked with CIOB. Okay, so we think that there are 3 areas that really are important for these projects to focus on to achieve success. And the first one is focus. The second point that we labour on is change itself and the management of the change. And the third is the resources. So we'll talk to the speakers, our guest speakers, a little bit about each of these topics moving forward. But just as a summary, focus is absolutely at the heart of all of these projects, all of the change projects. The member, the value for the member, and the engagement of the member, that has to remain the focus. And bringing those things together will drive the subscription income that we're all greatly seeking. But that often gets lost when CRM integration and technology are involved in the conversation. And I think that's possibly because they're easier to quantify and require seemingly less change. But where project team is mapping out requirements and those what functionality they're going to need to support those requirements, and then vendors are coming in and saying, great, we know how to turn requirements into features and functions and working components, and the project sort of tends to go towards the technology, and that becomes the driving force behind the project rather than an enabling piece underneath the project. Change itself is a whole field of its own, and a lot of companies, they're really good at incremental change, small changes, no problem, we can work on that. But a larger project is non-trivial and is a transformational change, and it's very easy to lose focus on managing the change in and of itself. And as it's something that doesn't come around very often, it's not a business as usual operation, that tends to be more difficult to manage. There can be a lack of focus on the change culture. How are we going to get not just the systems and the processes, but the people to change along with that? And there needs to be a framework put in around that, which I think the guys at CIB again have got some interesting perspective on. And the last point is resources. There are often in companies superstars, the people that do a great job that you can lean on, rely on, who bring projects in when things seem to be falling apart. And often that follows Price's law, where the square root of the number of people produce half the work. So it's interesting that those statistics exist, and in the way that we work as human beings, let alone professionals in membership organizations. But also, as these change projects are so unique, bringing in the right people who can drive forward these implicit underlying features of the project is really very important. And a last stat for you, from Forbes and McKinsey in 2021, the lack of necessary talent is one of the top 3 reasons why projects don't go to plan. So again, reinforced from the outside world in a broader context as well. Okay, well, I've waffled on enough now, so let's get to the meat of the presentation. We're going to pick up each of the topics: focus, change, and resources, talk to each of those, and get some thoughts and opinions from our panelists. So without further ado, I'd like to go over to Joanna, if that's okay. So thank you for joining us, Joanna. Can you set the scene a little bit for us? What is the objective of the CRM project, and what have you set out to achieve?
Of course, Chris, thank you. So from a strategic perspective, we really wanted to significantly improve the services that we delivered to our members and broader customers as well. The whole outcome that we're trying to achieve with this is an excellent and personalised experience for those members and customers. We really wanted to deliver a more seamless, joined up experience, so that interactions, including applications to membership and renewals journeys, were as smooth as possible. And also it's important to us to provide access to the resources our members and customers need easily, and pulling together all our disparate platforms we had, so including our CRM, our portal, and our mobile app. We also wanted to make sure that we could scale the membership experience and achieve efficiencies for all of our users. So both internal and external was really important. And the CRM and portal underpins so much of our work at CIOB, so that really, really was important. It's a big ask, I know, and we had to be really realistic about how we were going to phase this in. It's fair to say, and this chimes with the poll that we've just seen there, that our existing CRM was really holding us back. It wasn't fit for purpose. We have numerous manual workarounds. We're working on an old platform. The processes are inefficient operationally, so this results in significant staff time across the organisation managing issues. The member experience was slow and poor, which has been impacting membership perception on us, even for most basic tasks like renewals. All the wider solutions, like I mentioned, weren't integrated either. So we really wanted to address this and deliver it in what is a very challenging timeframe in readiness for our next annual renewals process. We also wanted to make sure we delivered this project with as little risk as possible, ideally. So for us, this meant using our chosen platform. Once we'd been through a tender process, we decided the right platform was Dynamics, but we wanted to make sure that we steered away from a custom build and had used as much out of the box functionality as we could.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it really touches on all of these different points, making sure that you've got the right focus on platform, no custom build, and increasing the efficiency of your processes. And there's so much to it. I think that it's really interesting how you describe that. I think that touching on all of these points means that you really had a lot of change on your hands, even though it seemed as though it was a relatively trivial project to join up the processes that you already had. Well, thanks very much, Joanna. Mike, could I come to you, please?
Yes, hi, Chris.
So there was a huge lot to achieve in all of that. What mechanisms did you put in place to ensure the project stayed on track? And how are you ensuring that you meet the objectives that you set?
So yeah, I think along with the obvious project delivery mechanisms you'd expect as standard here, I think one of the most important things to recognise is that this is more than just a technology IT project. So for us to be successful here, we put in place a program that covers people, processes, and technology. From a people perspective, things we're doing, we have a comprehensive communications approach in place. So that's communicating right from the trustees right down to the end users. And in that, we're sort of covering off, what is changing, where is it changing, and I suppose most importantly, why is it changing? So the benefits and the proposition behind why we're introducing this change. We make effective use of SharePoint, blogs, recordings. We also provide facilities for staff to sort of ask questions. I mean, that informs our ongoing FAQ development. It's a very simple tool, but can be very effective as well. We have in place a detailed training and engagement plan, particularly for those who are going to be most affected by the change, to support them through that. And then coming on to the processes, there's obviously opportunities to identify process improvement here. And that's where you guys, Intercloud9, are helping us tremendously with that. I think the point is that this is sort of not enabled by technology. It's enabled by technology rather than driven by it. And then the technology, we've got a readiness work stream there that's covering off things like integration, infrastructure, data warehousing, reporting, and cutover planning. And so importantly, it's about bringing all these work streams together, the people, process, and technology, into some sort of coherent delivery mechanism. And I suppose the key takeaway from what I just said is that it's not just an IT technology project, it's a business project supported by technology. Thank you.
Fab, Mike. Yeah, it really isn't an IT project, is it? Tilla, could I come to you? Where does the IT and technology fit in?
Hi there, Rich. So following on from Mike, I feel that IT do have a crucial role to play. We at CIOB have expertise in the technology. We have the capability of systems. We have a data warehouse solution in place. We've got various integrations. However, that's not what's leading the project. It's supporting the business to onboard the technology. I feel one of the really important aspects of what we do is to be the translation layer between the vendor and the business. So the project needs to ensure that change management, business process improvement, stakeholder engagement, and so much more is covered. And we need to understand that technology should be an enabler, like you said earlier on, but not the driver of the CRM project. The focus should be on what works and what doesn't work and what really needs to be changed.
Yeah, keeping a tight focus sounds very important. Thank you, Tilla. Jenny, can I go to you very quickly? What are the gotchas for this kind of project? What's going to catch people out?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, colleagues from CIOB have really hammered home the point that it's not about the technology, it's about the change. But I'll just quickly return to the technology, if I may, to talk about a couple of things to be aware of when potentially going out to market for CRM systems. We saw in the poll that around 66% are not satisfied. So we can infer from that that it's likely to be a significant number of membership organisations considering onboarding new CRM vendors or indeed platforms. So a couple of things to watch out for. Total cost of ownership is one. And the other I'll mention is solution due diligence, bit of a mouthful. Total cost of ownership can be really opaque. Of course, there's the obvious things like licenses, onboarding costs, support, maintenance. But in addition to that, think about consumption costs, which are often driven by the size of your database. So really important to rationalize your data before you migrate, not after. But also think about costs like upgrading can be tagged as free of charge by vendors, but often excludes the services that you need to actually implement the upgrade. Cost of enhancements to the solution, which are inevitable, like it or not, if you want your digital platform to evolve alongside your organization. And then on solution due diligence, think about vendors are likely to tell you that they can deliver what you need. Why wouldn't they? That's their business model. There's nothing wrong with that. And they may well believe that they can meet your requirements, but can they deliver that in a way that works for your organization? So my top tip here is to, rather than take standard demos from vendors, is ask them to demonstrate to you a set of business scenarios that you will define that cover the really high priority areas in your membership organization, and ask them to demonstrate those scenarios. That will give you a much better idea of the level of fit.
Fantastic. Yeah, sort of picking out very specific things that would make or break the project, I suppose, would be sensible to go along. Yeah, that's really great. So we can see that people, process and technology are incorporated throughout this whole piece, and that aligning the focus with the aligning the technology with the focus seems to be the most important thing to do here. Jenny, can I come back to you actually? Because when we move on to change, so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Why are organisations resistant to change?
Well, put simply, because people are resistant to change, and that's not anything that's particular to the membership sector. You talked about the lots and lots of stats earlier from lots of authority organisations about how difficult it is to deliver change successfully. And that's because change almost always equals a degree of uncertainty, and human beings hate uncertainty. When we feel uncertain, we cling to even more fiercely to what we know, to what's familiar and what feels safe. And most of this is completely unconscious. Many people are not actively opposing change. So ways of working often evolve organically in membership organisations over a long period of time, and habits are formed and behaviour is very difficult to change. Even if we can establish change in the short term, often people will quickly revert to old habits and that change becomes unsustainable. And this is especially true of any kind of change that is perceived to be imposed on people or top down. We know that when there's uncertainty, people will fill in the blanks. We can identify this type of feeling right in our personal lives as well as our professional lives. That's rooted in a lack of clarity on what the future state looks like and how this affects me as an individual, people in my team, and other departments. So often in these types of projects where they're seen as tech projects, we're down in the weeds talking about features and functions, whilst people over here are worried about what their job will look like in the future, or even if their job will exist. So naturally, lots of anxiety is produced. So, if that's the problem statement, what do we need to do about it? Well, critical to addressing that uncertainty is a crystal clear vision of what that target state looks like and what that means for the people and teams impacted by that change. And most importantly, a framework to help those teams to co-design that target state which will drive out uncertainty, give people a sense of agency over the design of their work, and therefore secure buy-in.
Right. So this is almost another project in and of itself.
That's fair to say.
Yeah. So change management is very important. Joanna, could I come to you next? How important has change management been to the success of the project?
Oh, absolutely critical, Chris. I think it's the absolute foundation to the success of a project. We've learned a lot over the years in terms of change management at CIOB, and particularly from the previous implementation of the CRM we had, which wasn't successful. And there were a number of reasons around that. And it's fair to say we keep learning as we're doing this implementation as well. It was a long and difficult implementation last time, so people really became disengaged with it. It was a heavily customized product, which, as I mentioned before, has led to significant issues and difficulties fixing issues when they arise, and a significant amount of staff time. So there wasn't a particularly positive view of our CRM. We also tried at the time to really bend the product to support our inefficient processes that were already in place, rather than changing to more of the out-of-the-box processes. Which resulted in overall a suboptimal solution. And since we implemented the previous one, a lot of time and effort and cost has been taken to try and make this work for us. So to meet the objectives of the new CRM implementation, we really needed to make sure we learned from this, from experience, and really focused on what we wanted to achieve, which I spoke about there, to ensure we were covering all bases. It was important for us that we had that integrated and cohesive strategy, really focusing throughout on what we wanted to achieve, and really importantly, managing scope creep. It's a classic one, and we keep seeing it pop in. That's really important to make sure people fully understand what we're trying to achieve and bring them along with us. So we're planning and managing the project so it covers all of the areas that Mike spoke about earlier in engaging people across the organisation. So to incorporate all of those bits that we've spoken about, the people, the process and the technology as we go through this change.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Again, so interesting to hear your experience of that. Thank you. Mike, what have you done to address change management in the project?
Yeah, Chris, change management was central to the project. I think, as Joe said, absolutely critical. As a first step, we prioritised this CRM project across the company. I suppose, in a sense, you can have the best of everything, but if there's too much going on, people are not going to be able to engage and embrace the change. So prioritisation was very important at the outset. We've got a framework in place through which we manage the stages of change. It's something the company understands, but it also sort of gives people context as to where things are at any given point in the project. Effective communication, mentioned it in the previous section. I mean, communication is so often synonymous with change, so it's really important in terms of helping bring people along a journey, and it is a journey. Breaking down the change into manageable and digestible components. Making use of all the tools available to reach everyone. People learn through different mediums. I think strong leadership and sponsorship is absolutely vital here, and this plays to the point around the prioritisation. We've benefited from that. There's been clear communication around the prioritisation. It's helped sort of create the conditions and the capacity for the project to get delivered and for people to engage with it. I think also change is so often manifested through business processes. It's sort of the output, the end goal of all of this. So optimizing processes is a key focus for us during this project. In Scard9, we're obviously working with you guys very closely on this. It's about sort of how do you unlock the efficiencies within your processes that will enable greater focus on high value areas. So, for example, new member acquisition.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. There's a lot of people involved in this, a lot of soft skills required to bring these projects to fruition. I'd like to interject ever so slightly here, a poll, if that's okay. So I'm hoping that those of you in the audience could answer along the lines of this question for us. So the question is, I am confident we can deliver a successful CRM project. I am confident that we can deliver a successful CRM project. And the options are the same as previously. Strongly agree, agree, disagree, neutral, or strongly disagree. Is that right? Yeah. So strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree that I am confident my membership organisation can deliver a successful CRM project. It'd be really lovely to get your feedback on that for those of you who are listening in or watching.
Okay, we'll just keep that poll open for a few more minutes. I can see that we've got our audience responding to that question. So just a couple more seconds and I'll share the results.
Thanks, Rich. Really appreciate that. Okay. Fab. Thank you very much, everybody. That's really good of you to get yourselves involved. So strongly disagree. 14% strongly agree, 27% agree, 27% neutral, 24% disagree, 8% strongly disagree. So 32% in the disagree or strongly disagree. So about a third would say not too sure about that. Don't think that's quite right. Okay, that's really great to know. Thank you very much, everybody. So sorry to interrupt you, Mike. I'd like to come back to you very quickly, just so that we can talk about responsibility. So who is responsible for change management?
Yeah, that's an interesting question there, Chris. I suppose of all the parties involved, the primary objective for sort of vendors and suppliers is delivery of software and services. And obviously through that delivery, there's going to be associated change. For example, your sort of processes, your systems and your behaviors. And really the only people that are going to be able to manage that change is you, the customer / client. So yeah, I suppose it plays to the fact that this is not just a technology component or technology project. It's more broader than that, and it requires change on a broader scale, which only you as a customer are in place to make that change. So yeah, it's a customer's responsibility without a doubt for change management.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so managing change, such a big topic and lots to it, and people and how they feel and buy-in and ownership and advocacy, that's all so intrinsic to change. Thank you very much, everybody, for talking to that point. That's really great. So I'm going to move us on to the resources topic. Joanna, I'd like to come to you if that's okay. We've covered getting the right focus, effective change management. How important are resources to a successful project?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so, the project output will only be as good as the input. So the team involved are absolutely key. Typically, obviously, we always find that the team you need with the right skills and experience are those colleagues that are inevitably always busy or focused on running the current processes and making the current system work, for example. So they're the ones you can least afford, but the ones you really need to have involved. So prioritization of that is absolutely critical, as Mike spoke about just now. And once you've got that right team in place, it's really important to ensure they have that time. So you prioritize it to focus on that. And that counts across the organisation. We found it, and Mike's talked about this, about communication and people being involved. So outside of that core project team, we have a number of wider teams from across the business supporting the project. And that's so important in making sure our requirements are met to meet business needs, the processes are understood, and that you have that support and buy-in across the organisation, and that support for this through our leadership and culture, as we've mentioned. I think that the wrong team or insufficient time put to this would significantly increase that risk of the first two areas we've talked about focus and change management failing. So that their involvement and their time is absolutely key. Yeah,
fabulous. You can really see how technology as a proportion of the project is slowly shrinking as we add in all of these extra bits. Mike, how did CIOB approach resourcing? What resources do you need to get it right?
Yeah, so Chris, I think this type of change is specialist by nature. So I think at the outset we worked out sort of the skills and the experience we're going to be needing.
Did you
as a
say
company.
specialists, Mike? Sorry to interrupt you. You said specialists, is that
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It is specialist in nature. It's infrequent, it's non-routine. So it's very unlikely that any company is going to have all the skills and experience to be able to deliver this. So at the outset, looking at your skills and experience and looking at where you're going to need to sort of augment that with specialists to help you through the delivery of this. For us at CIB, we very much framed this as a business project, and we put in place a blended team. So strong input from the business representatives, supported by the technology team, and also the augmentation through yourselves at Intercloud9 with your specialist skills and experience, things like sort of process improvement, data migration and UAT, but of course also importantly the sort of the inevitable troubleshooting that comes around through projects like this. And just a sort of last point to make there, just coming back to this prioritization and the communication of it through the leadership and the sponsorship on the project. I think it's very, very important. It enables individuals and teams at a local level to be able to ensure that they can prioritize and make space to contribute to the CRM project.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Mike. Jen, can I come to you very quickly? What do organisations get wrong?
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest issue is touching on what we've talked about already, that this is so much more than a technology project, and membership organisations perhaps not necessarily recognising that, and that there will therefore be gaps in their skills and experience. And Mike talked about this early on. These kind of projects only come round once in a blue moon, so it's right and proper that you wouldn't necessarily want to embed these kind of skills and expertises in your organisation over the long term. But I think the crucial thing is that actively identifying and assessing where those skills gaps are is really crucial. Thinking about specialist skills and capacity around things like process optimization, project management, digital transformation experience, and helping people to make sense of change and handhold people through that process, and really being able to clearly define that target state and to do that in a co-designed, co-produced way. But I think just to reinforce what Mike said there, getting it right is so much more than a technology project. It's really important, of course, to have the right solution and the right vendor. But what will really make the difference with success is having a well-rounded project team and having the time protected, especially for those individuals that are working on the project alongside their day job.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jen. Well, just to wrap up on this topic of resources, I'd like to come back to you, Joanna, very briefly. What advice would you give a membership organisation who's looking to take on a project similar to what you have?
Thanks, Chris. So there's so much, but to sort of summarise, I think to really start with that end in mind about what you're trying to achieve and where you're trying to get to, and keep that in mind throughout the whole piece that you're going through every time. Sort of keep questioning yourself when you're questioning things. Technology, as we've mentioned, should be the enabler and not the driver. It's not an IT project, it is a business-wide project. Don't underestimate change management. It's your responsibility and really needs to be prioritised. This project is one of our top priorities for the whole organisation, and that is so important. And don't scrimp on resources. Mike's talked about expertise and making sure you engage the right people across the organisation, both internally and externally. We've engaged members on this from the membership experience as well, which has been really vital. Thank you.
Fab, thank you very much, Joanna. I think that about wraps up all of the points that we'd like to talk to on this. I think that we've got a little bit of time left at the end here. Perhaps, Rich, I can hand over to you, or Joe.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, guys. That was really, really interesting. I think I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else has as well. So obviously it's very loud and clear. This is a lot more than just technology. I think that's the key message. Some questions here, let's get to those quickly. How would an organisation best deploy an MVP implementation of new CRM and all relevant integrations whilst keeping an eye on longer term requirements and strategy? Would anyone like to tackle that?
So I'll start us off, shall I, Jo? Okay, so I would start by answering that with the last word there, which is strategy. So an MVP can only or should only really be defined in the context of a bigger picture. So what are you actually trying to achieve here over the long term? And I mean that at an organizational level, not at a technology level. So if you've got a 3 to 5 year strategy, that would be a really great place to start. And then think about what would you need from an operational perspective and a technology perspective in order to enable that vision, deliver that vision and strategy. Once you've got that big picture, you can then start to drill down into the must-haves. You could use something like the Moscow framework, so must have, should have, could have, won't have, and start to think about the top level requirements and their priorities before then finally drilling down into an MVP. So I would definitely not start with what does the MVP look like. I would start with what's the strategy, what do we need to enable that strategy, and then start to think about the sequencing and priority in which you deliver those things.
So in terms of the next question we've got here is, any CRM is only as good as the data that's inputted. Any tips on behaviour change to get individuals to input and to maintain good customer data? Everyone is busy, so this isn't always a priority. I think we've heard that one before, haven't we, Jen? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I would say that the people aren't the problem. People don't come to work to do a bad job, right? They don't come to work to put data into systems. So I'd start off with what are the root causes? Do a proper root cause analysis into why the data quality is suboptimal. And I can guarantee it will be nothing to do with people and everything to do with the business process isn't clear. It will be to do with how data is interchanged or interfaced across systems, and so forth. So yeah, definitely root cause analysis is the key here. But also at CIOB, we work together really closely on a data retention and archiving policy. And that meant that rather than just jumping straight into data migration and bringing across what was already there, we certainly with Joe's sponsorship, looked at, well, what's the organisation actually need from its data and what's right and proper to maintain, thinking about GDPR, thinking about what the organisation values in its historical data. And then really implementing the data migration with that policy embedded. And that serves two benefits, right? It means that we get rid of any data that we don't want and need, and ensures compliance, but it also massively reduces your consumption costs when you're working into platform solutions.
Okay, yeah, a really solid response to that question. We've got a few more, so I'm going to power through these if that's okay. So Jen, I mean, in terms of CIOB, we've got a question here from Stephanie Toll, and basically she was asking, you know, what key goals, acceptance criteria and metrics did CIOB have or put in place to understand if they were making a difference to members and their experience? I suppose this is what's coming out the other side in terms of actually measuring success. So Stephanie's really kind of keen to hear perhaps what CIOB is going to be using to measure that success. I don't know if you could respond to that.
Yeah, sure. So I'll dive in initially, and of course CIOB, please feel free to jump in. Yeah, so we've worked really clearly on a set of acceptance criteria across both CRM and digital, and that acceptance criteria is about stating clearly what the solution needs to have delivered in order for the organisation to consider that it's fit for purpose. And that acceptance criteria is very much couched from the member's perspective, from the outside in. And never more was that true than on the digital piece. So all of the web user journeys and their acceptance criteria are stated in terms of the member's experience. So that's one piece. And then in addition to that, CIB are really passionate about getting their members early view of the new user journeys. So we'll be involving members, a cohort of members in the acceptance testing and getting their feedback on the improvement to those user journeys. So, you know, I think those are the two key areas. Have really clearly stated acceptance criteria for each user story and make sure that you involve your members in the actual testing process.
Okay, and that's a crazy idea, right? Actually getting members involved and actually looking at what's going to be provided for them.
In a controlled manner, Rich, of course.
I don't know if any CIOB colleagues have got anything they'd like to add. Joanna, I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that.
Yeah, Rich, thank you. And just to say, like Jen said, we've done it in a controlled way, but got volunteers from across our membership and our trustees. It's really important that we have their buy-in, and we've been involving them right from when we first started thinking about this. So, you know, they are fully supportive, and that's again important in that prioritisation piece. But we have done a piece of work. Our digital team has actually been out and spent time interviewing those members who volunteered to look at how they're feeling about their current experience, learn about those pain points, so we can make sure they're addressed from the start. You know, that formed part of our requirements, which was really important too. So we thought about them right from the early stage. And then as Jen correctly said, we are going to be going out to them to look at the testing when we come to the portal piece, and then obviously getting feedback more broadly as we come to implementation. And we've done internal and external surveys as well to support with that too.
So it sounds like a really thorough approach to that, and certainly what is really lovely to hear is, you know, the use of the word journeys, the use of the word experience, you know, all of these things. I don't know, Jen, we go back 10 years ago and, you know, maybe that would come into it, maybe not, but, you know, it really sounds, you know, like you've taken a really thorough approach. Now, we've got a question here from Martin, and I suspect it might be a little bit too early, but I don't know, you might be able to respond to this. And he's asked for actually examples of perhaps how you've optimized any efficiencies through that change. Is it a little bit too early, Jen?
I don't think so, Rich. We can certainly talk to the opportunities that we've identified already. Mike's leading on the business readiness work stream, and part of that work stream is looking at process optimization, so that we're delivering the solution to enable an optimal process rather than just repeating what's already there. A good example of this would be the renewals process that currently takes around 4 months from start to finish to deliver. But interestingly, only about 2 weeks of that time is work that happens on the CRM. So there's a lot of stuff that happens outside of the system that means that process is quite protracted, and that's really common across all of the membership organizations that we've come across. So, you know, I guess that kind of illustrates the point that what we've been able to do there is look at opportunities outside of the system. How do we speed up the decision-making process? How do we perhaps remove steps of decision-making that are not adding value to the process? And that's been quite a common theme in the business processes that we've looked at. Lots of membership organisations are quite risk averse, so there tends to be a culture of checking and of escalation for sign off, etc. But actually, when you really break that down, the cost of administering those checks is really in excess of the business benefits that those checks provide. So just been really clear through measures in a controlled way, the sorts of efficiencies that can be gained by reducing or even eliminating some of those checks and bits of quality assurance that happen, but to make sure that we're measuring that and quantifying it and testing it so that any changes that we roll out are done in a considered manner with proper data and evidence to show the benefits.
Okay, so that sounds like a sensible approach, and obviously those benefits hopefully will become apparent as you progress, and you know, in the short term, medium and long term. I've got a question here from I can speak today, an anonymous participant today, and they've got some tips on getting employers to see CRM as an integral, if you like, part of what's happening within organisations, and this ability to invest. Now, I mean, I've got first-hand experience of this, where I've worked within an organisation where it was kind of like CRM, oh, that's membership. you know, and then actually when you look at what's there to enable the continued support and the training and the insight that staff need to be able to use these new technologies and these new systems. I don't know, I mean, in terms of Jen, I mean, you've seen this in multiple membership organisations. I mean, have you got any advice for those organisations when it comes to the investment that goes beyond the implementation of these new systems?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's really what we've touched on today is helping to support membership organisations to see CRM projects as more than a technology piece. And actually by having a well-constructed project with a good cross-representation of stakeholders from across the organisation, you can get that buy-in as an intrinsic part of the implementation. I think where problems arise is where you've got a technology project over here, and then over another part of the forest, the business just goes on as usual, and then you try to slam those things together at the end during UAT. It doesn't work, right? It has to be a journey where those hearts and minds are considered and engaged throughout that journey. And that's where the real change happens.
Yeah, and in terms of some real sensible words of wisdom there. So we're now we've just come to the hour, so it's gone very, very quickly. And in terms of the content, both Jen and Chris, thank you so much for the insight that you've been able to provide for today. So no matter where you are on your journey, when it comes to CRM, hopefully some sensible words there that can be helpful. As I say, today's session is being recorded, so Chris and Jen will be able to share this with you. And first of all, a big thank you to both of you for sponsoring today's session. Really important that we touch on these topics, and we couldn't do these without you. So big thank you from MemberWise. Equally, Joanna and Tillett and Mike, you know, thank you for, I know you're very, very busy. There's a lot going on in membership, and I think it used to be this, oh yeah, the summer goes quiet. I don't see that happening anymore within membership bodies, but thank you for giving us some time today to share your story with us, because it really does bring the topic to life. And I know there's a couple of questions we've maybe not got to today. I think we've covered them within the themes of today, but I'm sure Jen and Chris, if you're comfortable responding to those privately, that would be fantastic.
We will, Rich, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Thanks, guys. You know, thanks for the hour, and we'll see you again next week for the MemberWise webcast. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Bye.